Michael J. with the Whig Tory. I'm going to start off today with Pierre Poilievre being interviewed on the housing issue by Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun. And then we're going to revert to Mark Carney being interviewed yesterday by Scott Galloway, an American NYU professor. He's done multi-million-dollar businesses and a billion-dollar hedge fund as well, Scott Galloway. So we're going to start off with Brian Lilly interviewing Pierre Poilievre. Any questions, comments? Throw in the comments section, please. Starting off with Brian Lilly and Pierre Poilievre.
And I just see our economy so weak that it's not going to give my kids the opportunity that existed when I was 20, 25. So I want to bring back that promise. And I know how to do it. I know if we get back to the basics, the common sense ideas that used to guide the country, that we can bring back the promise for everybody. And that's why I'm running.
You mentioned your wife Anna, her coming here as a refugee. My parents came here as immigrants, 1968, and back then it took about 5 years for new immigrants to catch up to the Canadian standard of living. My understanding, it is much longer now. Within 5 years, they'd saved up to buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that now. My oldest son left Ottawa a couple of years ago to move to New Brunswick. Why? Better opportunities in terms of hopefully one day being able to buy a house. Kids are leaving places like Ontario, not just Toronto, where everything is expensive and young families are just saying, let's pack it in and move elsewhere. People are leaving mid-sized cities like Ottawa and saying it's too much. I've asked you already to speak to the older voters. Speak to those younger ones that just don't feel like they're...
Okay, before he speaks to any age group, I want to set a baseline for everything. The affordability crisis, the housing crisis, is not exclusive to Canada, cannot be blamed on one government. It is an issue in the USA. It's also an issue in Europe, UK, around the world. So, if anybody is trying to convince you that it's based on the last government that was in government and it's all their fault, it's a false narrative and they're misleading you. This is not an overnight issue. It's taken its time and everybody's participating and participated in creating it. The system itself, the construct of the financial system, fiat economy, macro and microeconomic factors, the construct of that has also led to where we are now.
There is that hope of being able to buy a house. I can't think of any young person I know in Toronto without the bank of mom and dad being involved, being able to buy a house. I'll give you one more quick example. A young guy I met, Karthik, came to Canada about a decade ago. He makes very good money. He says, why should I be making high six-figure income and I can't buy a place to live? It's nuts. It's nuts.
When my wife was in her early 20s, she had a good job, but she was able to save up with her own money and get a down payment on a nice detached townhouse an attached townhouse in Orleans, East End of the nation's capital. That's how it was. It's funny. I shouldn't have sold it. I sold my condo in Barhaven, 35 minutes from Parliament Hill in 2015. It went for $219,000 or something like that. $219,000. It's unbelievable.
How much would that be going for now?
It hurts too much to say. I'd be a much richer man if I had rented it out. But the point is that housing was cheap 10 years ago in Canada. And it should be cheap. This should be the cheapest place in the world to own a home because we've got so much dirt to build on. We got more land per capita than any country in the G7.
I hear we have lumber.
We got lumber, we got workers, we have companies to build it. What we don't have is permits. we have high taxes and government delays that block home building. The majority of the cost of a new home is government. It's delays, permits, zoning, consultants, lawyers, accountants, lobbyists, all that.
So a lot of that is local
Some
municipal
of it is.
and
Okay, so Brian Lilly said a lot of that's local municipal, and he's correct. And if you take Ontario, Premier of Ontario, 1995, Mike Harris, City of Toronto, the amalgamation of the cities together. They were downloading services. That was the common sense revolution then. Downloading services and costs. Ontario healthcare system has not recovered to this day in 2025 from the effects of that Mike Harris government and that common sense revolution. Secondly, the amalgamations of the cities and downloading costs to the municipalities has created a situation because the municipalities regularly, or the only revenue they had, was based on property taxes. And to keep property taxes low, they did another way of doing things, and that was levying developer fees and all these different surcharges. And this is what they're talking about here and now. That's a result of a conservative government in 1995 in Toronto, in Ontario.
And I'll give a quick example from here. You mentioned Orleans. Spoke to one developer, and developers in Ottawa, as in most major cities, they work in all parts of the city. So this developer had put in plans to the city of Ottawa for a subdivision in Orleans. They wanted to replicate the same houses with the same plans, with similar street design and a different part of plot of land in the West End. We have to review all of your house designs once again. They'd already been approved by the city, but nothing that you submitted before, even though you're replicating it,
That's unbelievable.
is valid.
And 30% of the cost of that home will be direct taxes: sales tax, land transfer tax, development charges. So here's my plan. First of all, we're going to axe the GST, the sales tax on new homes. Second, I'm going to pay the municipalities half the cost of cutting their taxes. So up to 50 grand. So you combine the getting rid of the GST on new homes with getting the municipalities to cut their taxes by up to 50 grand. That's 100 grand in taxes that we can take off home building costs. On top of that,
You have to understand that the municipality will only get half. Then the other half the municipality will have to eat. And on that basis alone, the municipalities will be forced to pass those costs back on to the consumers and landowners. It's just the way things work.
I'm going to be linking federal infrastructure dollars for cities to the number of homes they allow to be built, to incentivize them to speed up permits, free up land, cut the development stuff.
Explain that a little bit.
Well,
because
why
that's been described by your opponents as you're going to punish cities.
Well, there's going to be a carrot and a stick. The carrot is that those that build more will get more infrastructure money. Those that build less will get less. And so that will incentivize them to free up the permits and speed up the approvals to get the homes built, to go down and say to the bureaucracy.
You have to understand also, during the Stephen Harper government, where Pierre Poilievre was a cabinet minister, they did the same approach with the infrastructure build out at that time. And it was a fail at that time. A lot of the monies were not sent out or nor used. And then a recession came to be a recession happened. Over 7 quarters of negative growth. Housing minister was Pierre Poilievre. He only built 6 multi-use buildings during that time, which Jagmeet Singh made mention in the debate last night.
In the bowels of the city of Ottawa, you can't force this guy to submit a new set of designs, even though he's already done it once before. The only way you're going to get these permits going is if you incentivize the municipalities with money for homes, money for doors. Pay them the way realtors and home builders get paid for each door. And that's how you'll get them out of the way. We're also going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings, thousands of acres of federal land to build new homes. And finally, back third.
But you also have to remember all that giving of land is going to go to developers, private enterprise, free markets, and they're going to have a built-in water. They're going to make a profit, and a big profit, because they always do.
350,000 training spots at mostly union training halls to get the young tradespeople who can build the homes in the future.
I listened to Mark Carney's housing announcement. I went through the news release. I went through the backgrounder. There was a word missing. Ownership.
Right.
There is a difference
Good point.
in views, and I see this.
Good point. This is a trope. It's misleading. And this is where you're being misled.
I cover all levels of politics, city hall, provincial, federal, and there is a view among some that, well, we don't need to have home ownership. We just have, and Justin Trudeau was putting that forward, and it looks like Mark Carney's carrying that on. You'll rent from the.
Okay, you know how this is how they mislead you. Well, it looks like he's doing this. It looks like he's doing this. Looks like he's doing this. And you just buy into it, you lap it up, and people believe it. Axe the tax, same thing. Say it enough, people believe it.
The government, or the government will own the land and lease it to you. And there's also this idea of we don't need single family homes. Everyone can live in a box in the sky. Look, I live in a box in the sky now in downtown Toronto. I quite like it. It's great. But if you're raising 1, 2, 3 kids, at a certain point, that becomes a pain. That you want a yard for the kids. You want a place for them to play. How are you different from what you've seen Mark Carney put forward, what the progressives at the provincial and municipal level push of this idea of, well, we'll put everyone in boxes and you can rent forever?
Well, different in every way on housing. Carney wants to continue along with the same policies that Justin Trudeau brought in that doubled housing costs. Look at the result. The results speak for themselves. They promised government was going to get, quote unquote, back into the business of housing.
Okay, that's an out-and-out lie. Housing costs under Harper et al., which included Pierre Poilievre, doubled. During the pandemic and after the Trudeau government took over from Harper and Poilievre's cabinet, housing costs did go up a good 50%. There's no doubt about it. There's been a trend on both governments, not exclusive to one.
In 2017, it's now been 8 years. And what has happened? The cost of everything has doubled. Rent has doubled, mortgage payments has doubled, and the needed down payment for a home. They've all doubled. We had the most.
Also, since December 2019, we had a worldwide pandemic. Everything ground to a halt. Governments were issuing funds on a monthly basis to keep people alive, being able to buy groceries. And you got no GDP, there's no work being done. Supply management or supply chains cratered. Only just recently started coming back online over the last 6 months. Been that long. And this is 2025, mid-April.
Most expensive real estate in the world after a decade of the Liberals. By continuing with the same policy, you're going to get the same result. You vote the same, you get the same. Carney is actually even more extreme than Trudeau in this idea. He wants to create some kind of a grand government corporation that's going to build prefab homes and rent them to you. And no one will ever be able to own a house under that model. How do you build up equity?
You notice again this rent to you, rent to you, rent to you. And that's disingenuous. It's not factual. It's not real.
For your retirement? How do you build up your biggest asset when you're a permanent renter? And how do you start a family if you can't have a yard or a driveway where they can play street hockey and where they can let the dog outside? The beautiful suburban life that Canadians want requires single family homes. So governments don't build homes. The good news is they don't have to. We have lots of builders. We have lots of land. What we need is the government to get out of the way.
One other thing. Street hockey in the city of Toronto is a bylaw infringement going back to the 1980s, late 70s.
Get the taxes and the red tape off so that they can build.
I forget the name that he gave to the new group, but it's basically creating a new bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Because the old bureaucracy that is in charge of this, Canada Mortgage and Housing, isn't doing a very good job. So
He's going to give it a new name.
that bureaucracy isn't good enough, so let's have a different bureaucracy.
That's right, and that's what they're going to build.
And there's another misleading topic. CMHC, Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, mostly is a high risk insurer to insure mortgages in order to get people into the housing market for the most part. So let's be clear about that.
It's bureaucracy. We don't need to build more bureaucracy. We actually need to build more homes. And we can do that. We will. But why is it that housing in the United States, where they have 8 times the people housed on a smaller land mass, is 25 to 45% cheaper than it is here in Canada? Why is it that you can buy a house for half the cost in the American side of Niagara than on the Canadian side? The answer is that you can get things built there, and you don't get taxed through the nose for doing it. We need to do the same. That's what we used to do in Canada. That's why housing was always cheap in this country, and we will make it affordable again.
There we go. You can go to Detroit, you can go to Windsor, bust and boom cities. Or, well, Detroit, the other side of Windsor. Buffalo, the other side of Niagara Falls. Back in the early 1900s, Buffalo was considered, it was going to be the number 1 city in North America, in the United States. That didn't work out. So now we're going to pivot to Mark Carney, be interviewed by Mr. Scott Galloway, professor of NYU Business School, Stern Business School. Gentleman is running a $1 billion hedge fund, has created and sold many businesses over multi-$100 million in value. Does a podcast with Kara Swisher. And now we'll get down to some real business where everything is explained in very detail, but not platitudes, and in a more business-like manner, and just get to the facts.
Look, you have a housing crisis, we have a housing crisis.
Yikes, what did he just say? You have a housing crisis, we have a housing crisis. And I explained that when the Brian Lilly with Pierre Poilievre interview was going on. It's not exclusive to Canada. You cannot blame it on the last government. It's much deeper than that. It's been going on and building up for a long time. And the United States has the same problem.
Look, you have a housing crisis, we have a housing crisis. And it seems like leaders have agreed that it's a crisis for the last 10 years. Now, I read that housing in Vancouver as a percentage of the average salary is the 3rd most expensive city in the world. And that so much of it is in zoning and NIMBYism. And the previous prime minister, they wanted to address the housing crisis. What's the friction point? Is it capital? Is it labor? Is it zoning? What is different about what you're proposing that is going to register any more progress than previous administrations?
So it's all of the above, and so you attack it in in a comprehensive way. I'm going to simplify in terms of restriction zoning, development charges, and we work at multiple levels of government. As part of the reason why those costs are there. They come from the municipal side. And so in effect, we put up a bunch of money, to commit to cut the development charges in half. Okay, and that's subject to a series of other restrictions being removed, but we at the federal level will pay for that to be cut in half. The second thing, we believe very strongly that productivity in the Canadian housing sector, construction sector, basically is flatlined for the last 20 years. Okay, we're still building houses like we did before, and given the scale of what we need to do, we got to move much more rapidly, particularly in urban density and other things. So, modular prefab housing, mass timber, other innovations that are there, they exist. And so one of the things we're going to do to kickstart that industry, and this is Canada's, not the United States, we have a different attitude toward these things. We have a problem with deeply affordable housing, right? Certain countries you might call it social housing. We just have not built that for decades, basically, in effect. And so we need to catch up. And so part of what we're doing is we're going to build a huge amount at that level and set the specs, if you will, for that. We're going to build by, on our balance sheet as a developer, and we'll set the specs for that, which drive the industry upstream in prefab, mass timber, et cetera, which gets the economies of scale there. But by and large, we will rely on private sector build. We'll make a bunch of land available. We'll make cheap capital, $25 billion for developers in this case, which is bigger money up here. Cut those development charges in half, drive that, and then we will give tax breaks to people buying their first time home. So basically they're getting 5% off their first time home, which, from a down payment perspective starts to add up. So attacking it both on the supply demand side. The way we look at it is this is generational. Like, the scale of the problem is generational, such that we're building out a huge pipeline of apprentices in the skilled trades. And one of the core messages I give virtually every time I speak, so I'm going to do it now, is this is going to be a great time for a career in the skilled trades in Canada. Because we're going to build for the next 25, 30 years. Like, we are going to add, if we get this right, and we intend to, 3 to 4 points of GDP of investment. That's a huge number, right? It's possible. We used to invest at that scale relative to GDP in the early 70s. We can do it again. We can finance it. We got all the pension funds. We got lots of money to finance it, but we need to kickstart it. And of course, it's housing. We start with housing. It's not just housing. It's energy. It's other elements. But that's what we're going to do. So we want to get young people into the skilled trades at scale. We're going to pay for all their apprenticeships. We're going to work with the unions to pull them through. We're adding a bunch of capacity at post-secondary education so they can get these trades at a scale. So we're getting hundreds of thousands, which again, in the US doesn't seem like a lot, but in Canada, these are big numbers.
Let's talk a little bit about climate and energy. You've evolved from being